Morning. Would you please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we beseech your divine guidance in this meeting. Keep us ever mindful of our obligation. Grant us, dear Lord, wisdom, tolerance, and courage, that we may well serve our county and fulfill our trust. Amen. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, we have minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 13th.
Second.
Discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes. Does anybody have any public comment regarding pending resolutions? If not, we will move on to resolutions. County Engineer, we have Dan here today.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hope everybody had a nice holiday and
Yes.
Father's Day. Okay, I've got two resolutions for your consideration today. The first resolution is the necessity to close Spieth Road between Columbia and Abbeville Road. And the second resolution is the determination that equipment is used and we're going to get rid of it. Sorry.
Okay.
Feels like a Monday.
It's surplus. Yeah, okay.
It's surplus. I'm sorry about that.
That's right. Move to approve both resolutions.
Second.
Discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jeremy Cinco, Sanitary Engineer.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Two resolutions for consideration today. The first is amending the agreement with Jones & Henry Engineers for professional design services for the Fenn and Marks Road Elevated Storage Tank Project. And the second is declaring the necessity of the 2022 Home Sewage Treatment System Replacement Project and authorizing the sanitary engineer to commence advertising for bids.
Move to approve both resolutions.
Second.
Discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Holly Murin, Human Resources Director.
Good morning. Our personal changes resolution today, we have one new hire in transit, two promotions, one in building and one in sanitary, 7 rate increases, 3 in sanitary, 1 at solid waste, 1 at office for older adults, 1 in building, and 1 at county home, 1 leave of absence at Job and Family Services, 1 change in leave of absence at Solid Waste District, 1 return from leave in maintenance, 2 resignations in maintenance, and 1 probationary removal in sanitary.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Holly.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Brett Thomas, Finance Director.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I have 8 resolutions for your consideration today. The first one is amending appropriations, budget increases throughout. Most notable one on here, just for any questions, there is a $577,000 one that is for moving Transit's prior year operating over to their continued reserve. Second resolution is transfers of appropriations. Our third resolution is expenditure adjustments for various funds. Notable on here is $25,000 that we are moving for the sheriff's fund, just because of the money given by Medina County Police Activities League. So we're doing a fairly standard transfer there. Fourth resolution is revenue adjustments, mostly just things that needed shuffled around for getting into accounts after we've moved some cash around. Our fifth resolution is cash transfers. You will notice that this is a very long list this time. This is due to the fact that we have been working on a special project to kind of go through and clean up some of the old grants that had not been finalized out for 2021 and 22. So the sixth resolution for you guys is the creation of the Felony Delinquent Care Fiscal Year 24 Fund. We had approved this on May 30th, I believe. This is our fund creation and budget allowances for that. Our seventh resolution is the Medina County Home is going to be purchasing one of the vehicles that we already own from the Building Maintenance Department. So rather than having to surplus that and putting it out to auction, we're able to transfer between them. And then finally, the eighth resolution is for our weekly bills in the amount of $1,796,645.38. As usual, copies of the bills are kept at the auditor's office for anybody's perusal.
Move to approve the 8 resolutions.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes. Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Chris Jacob, County Administrator.
Good morning. First resolution this morning approves an amended agreement for Community Corrections Grant Program for the Medina County Adult Probation Department. You had previously authorized an agreement in the amount of $1,818,812 for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. The state has now slightly reduced that award amount and is asking us the board to amend the grant agreement, an executed grant agreement for a reduced amount of $1,757,612, also for the same time frame. Second and final resolution this morning authorizes the advertisement for bids for the Medina County Office for Older Adults kitchen renovation project. This has been a long-sought goal of the Office for Older Adults. Previously, this past fall, Laura Toth provided a very nice summary of the scope of the project, and the architect has now put together the estimated cost for the work that corresponds to the scope. The estimated project cost is $765,000. Part of this would be funded, a large part of this would be funded from the county's ARPA allocation, and a smaller portion would be funded from social service levy funds that are available to the Office for Older Adults.
Move to approve both resolutions.
Second.
Discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes.
Laura's here also. I don't know if you wanted to
Did you want to
say
say
a few
anything,
words
Laura?
or...
I just want to, like Chris has said, this has been just a long goal, and I've never done a construction project of this size. I'm really looking forward to it. We're trying to make all accommodations so seniors continue to get the services that they need, not only right now during construction, but as I said to Chris in a meeting, we moved in 1982, so it's lasted 40 years. Let's make sure it lasts another 40 years. So that's really the goal. So I thank you so much for your support on this.
And your opening was lovely last week.
Thank you.
was very
Thank you
nice.
so
Yep,
much.
yep.
Yes, we're Suprema Senior Center Cafe is open for business. I encourage everybody to come down. It was a beautiful opening. Thank you.
Okay, did you have something else?
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, department updates. We have Richard Nelson here.
Good morning. I also have one resolution also, and that is to renew Julie Sipka's contract as plan examiner for an additional 2 years at the current rate of $70.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Roll?
Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick?
Yes.
Thank you. For our monthly report, overall value of construction happening around the county continues to, be down from last year, about 24%. New home values are trending down. At year-to-date, $346,000. That's down from last year's $371, and the previous year's $454. The good news is the new home starts is up on a 5-year high, which is pretty amazing, but they're all smaller homes. But still, that's a good thing. Second page, monthly receipts is showing about a 13% down from last year. Third page, year-to-date receipts also down 13%. Fourth page is breakdowns of township projects. The fifth page is shows the graph with the townships that have all the new dwellings going in. It's quite amazing. Brunswick Hills showing a lot because of the Redwood apartments, Redwood development. And moving on, again, commercial breakdown, townships. And the last page shows all the commercial activity. Pretty good number of commercial projects, but it's, still is overall down from last year. But still. Other stuff, our residential review times are pretty good, but they did slip to 6 days on the residential, some because of the holiday. And there's still, quite a bit coming in. In our commercials at about 20 days. And we did promote Liz to main clerk, and we are in the process of hiring a new clerk to backfill the position. So we're doing okay.
6 and 20 is still very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Are those numbers normally on the report?
Which ones?
The 6 and the 20 day, or is that just something?
I always ask him. So he's
Okay,
always
I got you.
I always add it.
I remember, I guess I just remember hearing it.
It's hard to put it in writing. I mean, it's hard to pre-do it. I just check it in the morning here
Yep.
and see where we're at.
No problem.
It's always floating around 4 to 6 days in residential and 18 to 24 in commercial. And even that's hard. The biggest projects, of course, take the longest. And this is kind of a overall farthest out kind of a date. There's a bunch of projects that get, turned around in a day or two, even in the commercial, because there's no big review going on. It's pretty simple.
Just for context, before Richard came back, there was months after some numbers, not days, so
Yeah.
it's to be commended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
Mark Frederick, 6146 West Smith Road, Medina, Ohio, United States of America, continent North America, planet Earth, Milky Way solar system. Anybody could find me, I don't have to hide. I wasn't going to say nothing today, I didn't bring my bag of goodies, but seeing they had to come in and pay my taxes, you know what? Let me get my 2 cents in. I'll bet you I pay more taxes than any of you. Public record if I wanted. That's one thing. We got to keep an eye on the spending and the taxes around here. It seems to me that the more you give government, the more they spend. And then their next move is to pass another levy and get more money. Spend that too. It never ends. I don't know where. I wouldn't want their job for $1 million, be honest with you. You got to put up with guys like me coming in here complaining all the time. But the last time I was here, I spoke about train derailment. Remember? East Palestine got me lit. And that track going across Medina goes right through my backyard. I used to own both sides of the track, land underneath it. Sold the back 5 years ago to Ravago. Did okay, but I still own the front half. And what if one of them flips over in my backyard? It's a real potentiality. Last time I was here, I said it, and wouldn't you know it, if Spencer didn't have a little derailment. I'm not laughing about it, it's not funny, but you know what? Proved my point. Almost prophetic. How long until the real one hits? We don't know what's rolling through some of them tank cars a block from here. I don't know what's rolling through my backyard. 90% of it, I look out, I see gravel. I know it's aggregate for the concrete companies. I see plywood. I know what's going through there. But the tank cars scare me. And that's more than just a Medina County problem, I understand that. But my real guess is I want to see a written emergency plan. That's what I asked for last time. Still didn't get one. But don't worry, I'm not going to give up. I'll get one, you know that. whether it's from the county, and I'm going after the Medina Fire Chief also. I want one from Medina City out of it. Well, that's it. Oh, and I did say something last time about my $30 dog fine that got pocketed by the dog warden, dog catcher. Guess what? A little explanation goes a long way. You know, they explained to me where my $30 was. It was in a different line. So I have to admit, nobody pocketed my 30 bucks, you know? But just so you know, keep an eye on you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any public comment? Okay, we will move on to discussion session. Chris, did you have anything?
I do not. Thank you.
Dan, Richard, Steve?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up, I think Andy and Aaron had sent an email regarding NOACA. There was a presentation regarding the reduction actually of urbanized area. Medina County, even though we continue to grow at a very strong pace, as we've already heard, believe it or not, if you look statistically and by definition of the U.S. Bureau of Census, we're really not considered a urbanized area anymore, and in fact, it has affected our transit. Our transit went from, over a decade ago, we went from rural to urban, had significant losses in revenue. We've adjusted to it. Now we're going back from urban to rural. We've talked about that here, which likewise calls into question our funding. As I understand, what Andy Conrad sent over is we will see a reduction in actually attributable urbanized funding at NOACA. And I would like, and I know we've had discussions here about kind of extricating ourselves as a county, and I noticed that there are other MPOs in this state that they don't incorporate the entire county, they only incorporate the urbanized area for the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. Doylestown is an example as part of AMATS. It's not the entire county of Wayne County, but it's just that area. I'd like to propose that we look for outside legal counsel, examine the best, because I know that there are some of these issues have occurred historically in other areas, OKI, which is Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. That's a metropolitan planning organizations. I know the MPO out in Columbus area likewise has used outside counsel defining their areas because they don't include entire portions of counties as part of their planning responsibility. So I would like to, and this really is outside the realm of a county prosecutor in terms of experience, and it has to not only looking at a state law but certainly federal code. And I think those are areas that really I think we ought to identify potential legal counsels and then look to potentially hire them and look at what our options are. Because we're not happy with the decision-making process of being outvoted time and time again. Certainly, if we're getting less money, we're going to get about a third less money than we've had before, and it seems to be reducing, and this is over the next decade maybe, and since we're no longer considered an urbanized area, we maybe ought to look and see if we can make some modifications to that agreement and pursue that course, but I think we need to find the right legal counsel to help guide us. So I'd like to throw that out.
I think this is an excellent idea. I think it's a discussion that has been gradually coming for a while. NOACA is a dues-paying organization. Our residents do pay dues to be part of this organization, and they're significant dues. And for a long time, I have felt that Cuyahoga County has always been the focus of the organization, and I think it is a wonderful time to start looking at some legal counsel.
So Andy, since you and Andy, do you want to maybe jointly look and see what outside legal counsel might?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think
Okay.
Because you mentioned the federal statutes plus the revised code, you also have the organizational bylaws,
Sure.
which they themselves are complex enough to, even for a legal mind, to look at and kind of unwind. And so I think the balancing of those, that multitude of things is a project that is beyond the scope of our prosecutor's office, who, by the way, they do a spectacular job for us. But this is maybe a bigger picture project than what they need on their plates.
Specialty,
Yeah, so I think we'd probably get more efficient analysis and, most importantly, a breakdown of options, because these things tend not to follow a straight line path. You know, there may be several different things, and we need to weigh potential outcomes or things that maybe aren't on our radar right now as we look at the future and what, the best path forward would be. So I think considering it with somebody who's got that broad-based expertise makes is a good idea. So I'll reach out to Andy. We'll see about kind of getting an understanding of the lay of the land, and then I guess I have not been involved in retaining any outside counsel since I've been here, so I assume that would be something that we'd do some.
Well, Chris could give us some guidance on that. I think
Yeah.
we do have the provisions. We can seek outside legal counsel.
Yes.
Do we have
Those
a
kind of
pre-approved list of providers, or is it something that we ask for?
Oh, no.
Okay, okay,
No.
Okay.
But I can offer some suggestions.
okay.
Sure, we could, how we want to go about it. I know about, that had to been like at least 20 years ago when we were talking about, because of the Avon interchange and looking at, that was, quote, one of the options discussed, but since we were continuing to urbanize and we were growing, and it looked like our urbanized area was going to continue to grow.
Expand,
And
right.
when you start talking about national, MPDS, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, our urbanized area actually increases from that. And at that time, we said, well, if we're going to continue to urbanize, it's going to be hard to make an argument that we should only extricate portions of it. But now, I guess since the numbers and the definitions have turned against us, maybe now's the time to say, okay, that is an option that might actually be viable. In which case Brunswick would, as I would anticipate, if it works out that way, Brunswick could, and that area in the north would still be part of
Yes.
NOACA. Wadsworth would be part of AMATS, and the rest of the county would literally be free.
It's a great solution, and eliminates a lot of the problems that we've
I
had.
think so.
Well, and I think my other fear with the changing and evolving definitions is that we fall between, programs, meaning
Yeah.
we maybe, and we've heard some of this from transit, right? Some of our transit programs don't fit squarely in what NOACA is capable of funding, but because we are part of an MPO, that some of the rural funds aren't available either, or may not be available. So I'd hate for our continued involvement in an organization where our share of the funding is shrinking, prevents us from availing ourselves of other programs that may be available for similar funding sources simply because we're a dues-paying member. That seems like a
Agreed.
double whammy, so.
Agreed. I think, yeah, that's why I think special legal counsel will
Yep.
help us identify that.
Awesome.
And maybe a path, so, okay.
We'll take care of that.
Yes, what was the also? Was there an also?
No,
See, we're all dumping it on the new guy.
I have told people, I will say this for the benefit of the meeting, that's the one area where I feel like I drew the short straw as the new guy, but the other areas you've all been very. And then I believe there will be a resolution proposed the next time Adam Board reports to us for what's called the Stepping Up Program, which is Justice Stratton, former Justice Stratton of the Ohio Supreme Court. It relates to, it's not a funding commitment, but it's a program at the state level for some of our substance abuse programs and probation programs and things at the jail, and kind of pulling those together. What I've learned in the course of learning more about the program is it's a lot of things that Medina County is already probably engaged in many best practices, but it's just some additional resources they bring into the fold to kind of help keep everybody up to date and up to speed on what's going on. So that's a resolution that might be coming down the pike as well, proposed by the Adam Board to kind of continue to enhance the recovery resources that are available to our jail population. So just something to keep on your radar.
anything else?
No.
Okay, we received an email from Chris, kind of a reminder that the social services levy, it's time for renewal, which would be to go on this November in order for us to meet the August deadline. There's a couple resolution steps that we have to take. Are we in agreement on going forward with the straight renewal? Have you given any
Well,
thought to it?
He just sent it.
Right,
just
right,
says, "I've
right.
not even reviewed it."
I just didn't know if anybody had any thoughts. Should this
I
time
think
we?
we ought to, well, I think further discussion next week potentially.
Okay.
There's a question I have that remains the prosecutor, and there is actually, within the current House budget, the House version had put in to eliminate replacements entirely in the future as of 2025. The Senate version basically removed that language. And the CCAO board, or our trustees, have encouraged that the Senate version ought to prevail, and allow current law. A lot of school districts don't use replacement, but a lot of counties that have human services levy. And what it means, it is a tax increase, but it brings it up to, basically, you're just bringing it back up from the reduction factors to the original millage. So a 1 mil still collects at 1 mil, rather than a reduced effective rate. And if it's current language. So those are issues we need to talk about, and there's also...
But that makes it difficult timing-wise, because if they
Yeah.
do some changes it is in the budget bill, then it is effective immediately.
No, the language says 2025. So you'd be able to do a replacement up until 2025.
So we'd be okay
Yes, we would,
with
but-
November,
But we ought to have
okay.
that discussion, because if they're going to close that off and then never have the ability to get back to the original millage, then that's the time you actually talk about, like, well, maybe we ought to readjust it, because all future successive levies would then no longer be able to, go restore it, if you will.
How many steps do we have, resolution steps? Is it just like
2.
2, and is the number of weeks in between needed, or?
I don't believe so, no.
So we're still okay timing-wise for the August
Yeah,
deadline?
I think you've got time to
And
have a discussion.
I'll present the question too that wasn't discussed in 2019. And I know, as a member of the General Assembly, we changed the law to allow transit to actually be included as a eligible human services. And that wasn't taken into consideration in 2019. The question I have is, if we were to do a replacement, and prosecutors reviewing it, would transit be eligible as one of those entities? We know currently they don't need the money, but Shannon has very clearly indicated, as well as a comprehensive plan, this is short-term. In the next year, 4 or 5, we are going to need more local resources. So the question is, how are we going to be able to, and maybe now's the time to talk about that, is how
Should
do
we-
long-term? And so I
Should
think
we
need to
invite
discuss that.
Philip and Laura and Debbie
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Shannon
That's
to
a
come to
great
the
idea.
meeting next week?
Yep.
Sure, sure.
So if
sure.
we could invite-
Well, we need an answer from the prosecutor, I think,
Right.
as to whether that would be eligible or not.
Yeah, I have not received a response.
Okay,
but,
got it.
I'll send a reminder.
Okay, good.
So if we could send out an email asking the 4 of them to come, because we'll be
Sure.
discussing the levy.
Yeah, and I think it ought to be, obviously, all open, it's all meant to full communication, full disclosure to everybody, but transit, I think, ought to be, frankly, from my perspective, we need to find some dedicated funding in the future for them. Now's the time to maybe include it, because of what the, and we know the demand of resources, and this is a lot of that. Like I said, they're doing pretty good now, but in year 4 and 5 and so forth, from the levy, it may not, that will be the question for that Board of Commissioners. And frankly, I'd rather, long-term plan, hey, we've got some additional funding to be able to provide it, especially with opening up of, if we see the level response here in Medina that we have had in Wadsworth, with that flex.
Yep.
And with almost the doubling and tripling of the use of transit, we're gonna be, in the future, actually a higher demand. So I think,
Right.
which is great, that's what transit's for, but likewise, it helps provide, we're finding people traveling more often now that it's available, which is actually a good thing.
It will be great to have them here next week.
Yeah.
That is-
I would suggest.
I think, and I just glanced at the numbers before the meeting too, I think that's one of the areas actually that was one of the variable costs on Laura's number was transit costs too. And so
Yeah, yeah.
if there's a exchange factor in there, or
Mm.
if the funding is shared, that might, I don't know that'll make those costs any more predictable, but it at
Right.
least, we know there's some other favorable things we can do as far as that relationship goes between the
Yeah.
two departments, so.
Because I have a hard time imagining that even in the future, transit would have its own funding source dedicated as a tax.
Mhm.
It would always be a general fund expense
Yep.
by the commissioners. And frankly, for long-term planning, we're going to have a downturn, let's face it. And in the next number of years, we want to make sure there's some stable funding to provide services to people.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that
Next
up.
week on the agenda then,
Very good.
and we will get our guests here.
Super.
And does anybody have anything else?
All right. I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll. Hambley?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Sweattick? Yes. See you all next week. Thank you.